با مصاحبه ویژه ما با جبرائیل عمر خوش آمدید. جبرائیل عمر شهروند استرالیا است و قبلا با نام تیموتی ویکس شناخته میشد. او که قبلا سابقه تدریس در دانشگاه آمریکایی افغانستان را داشت، حالا به افغانستان برگشته است. وی در سال 2016 توسط نیروهای امارت اسلامی افغانستان ربوده شد و پس از 3.5 سال در سال 2019 با انس حقانی تبادله شد. او حالا به کابل برگشته و در جشن 1 سالگی حاکمیت امارت اسلامی افغانستان اشتراک کرده است. ما در این مصاحبه با جنبه‌های مختلف زندگی او خواهیم پرداخت.
Mr. Omar, let's start from here. When you were in the prison of the Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan and you were close to being released, some forces of the Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan told you that one day they would invite you to Afghanistan as a guest. Now that you have returned to this country, what do you think about the security of Afghanistan as you have seen it so far?
I believe the security has increased greatly. I was here in 2016, and although I only spent 3 weeks here, when I went out on the street, I got a sense of urgency from the people. People were rushing from place to place to place to place. They didn't feel safe. At night time, shops would be shut as soon as the sun would go down. There would be no people on the street, definitely nobody walking, riding their bicycle. There would be no children in the park. I found it quite alien. And coming back this time, I've had the opportunity to go out several times now in both the day and the night, and the situation is completely reversed. I see people strolling around the street. I see men sitting eating ice cream in a park. I see children. I see mothers with their children. Western media paints this picture that there are no women in Afghan society, or that the women are locked up in their houses, and that is simply not true. I have seen them walking through the streets by themselves, with hijab, without hijab, with their children, with their husbands, and there is life in Kabul again. There is nightlife. People are going out and enjoying the fresh air. I must say, alhamdulillah, the weather in Kabul at the moment is beautiful. I couldn't fault it. And overall, I think that the security has completely reversed from what it was. People have a feeling of safety when they're walking in the streets.
Mr. Omar, what made you decide to come to Afghanistan initially, even knowing the risk?
I've worked in several countries around the world where they have been high risk. I was in Palestine during the second Intifada. I wasn't just in Palestine, I was in Jenin, in the north of Palestine. I've worked in Timor-Leste before I came, and Timor-Leste was a country which fought a war against an occupying force for almost 2 decades, with a guerrilla army, vastly outnumbered, vastly outgunned, and I knew the risks. I spoke to people. I was working with the military in Timor. I spoke to people in the Timorese military, in the Australian military, in the American military, and it was also part of my dream. As a young kid, my grandmother used to tell me stories. They had a carpet on the wall. I refer to it as a Persian carpet, but I really don't know if it was Persian, if it was from Azerbaijan, anywhere on the Silk Road. But she used to sit me down when I was sad, and she would tell me stories about it. And she would tell me one day that you will be able to travel to these places. I had been to many places in the Middle East, and I had always been fascinated by Afghanistan. And after 4 years in Timor, I decided to take the position that I was offered here.
Okay. Mr. Omar, I want to ask you some other question. What's the main reason you come back to Afghanistan?
Because I didn't get to see any of Afghanistan the first time. I was here for 3 weeks before I was taken. What I saw in those 3 weeks of the culture, of the people, the students that I had were wonderful. Afghan students are intelligent, curious. They really, really have a desire to learn. And that is a great advantage for a teacher. I also love the food, the culture, and the clothing. You know, there is such a variety and diversity of clothing throughout the country, a diversity of people, a diversity of languages, and that is what makes Afghanistan great, is that great diversity. So I decided to come back and take a second look.
Thank you, Mr. Omar. In a part of your speech on the day you arrived in Kabul, you said that your purpose in coming to Kabul was to complete your trip. How do you want to complete this journey?
I haven't come back just to be a tourist. I have come back because I feel, as an educator, that I can contribute to Afghan society in a modest way. When I was in captivity, I made a promise to Allah, and the promise that I made to Him was that if I lived, that I would come back to this country. I can't break a promise to Allah. You know, this is something that I will not do. And I will not break the promise that I made to the Afghan people. I have come back here because I'm an educator, because I believe that I can help, and I hope that I can contribute in any small way that I can. My presence here is not just to sit and talk with you. That's a tiny part of what I want to do. I want to be out there, I want to be helping, I want to be solving problems, I want to be, you know, helping in any way that I can with your educational system, and this is my plan, is to stay and help.
You know that Afghans, all people, need academic support. Will you contribute to help the Afghan people?
That's the main reason why that I'm here. In addition to helping any way I can with public education, it is my desire to set up a charity for the education of women. I'm going to set this charity up in Zabul. It was the last place that my feet were on the ground in Afghanistan. I am also from a farming area myself, and I know the challenges of growing up in a remote area. And as well as education, setting up my charity, and just taking time to travel around Afghanistan. Of course, I want to learn Pashto. It's an incredibly difficult language. I'd like to try and learn some Dari as well. And on top of that, I'm still struggling with my Arabic. So I have a lot of goals while I'm here.
Mr. Omar, after that you decided to come back to Afghanistan, did you have or have you had any second thoughts?
No, I haven't. My family may not be happy to hear that, but this is not something that I decided overnight. I have been discussing this issue with my family, with my close friends, with members of the Australian government, and online, in Twitter. It's public knowledge that I have been talking about coming back to Afghanistan almost since the day I arrived back in Australia. It's not a surprise, but I'm not saying that it's not easy. I have acute chronic PTSD, which affects me. I also had grade 5 cancer, which I'm undergoing treatment for. So, although I have no regrets about returning, it doesn't mean that it was an easy decision to make, but the hospitality of the Afghan people and just being back here, it's helping me to overcome the difficulties that I'm facing.
Okay. Would you like to bring your family to Afghanistan in the future?
I would love to bring my family to Afghanistan in the future. When I was working in Thailand, I brought my mother and father to Thailand. It was the first time that they had been out of Australia, I think, in their lives. And they loved it. And my family know my connection with Afghanistan. And for them to be able to travel to this country would be like sharing a part of my heart with them, so that they can understand what is inside me and what motivates me. Because sometimes that's so difficult because it's clouded by propaganda from Western media.
Mr. Omar, you wrote on your Twitter that a new era is dawning in Afghanistan, which promoting Islamic education for all. What does it mean?
A new era dawning here refers to the end of the last 20 years of endemic corruption, abuse of power, human rights abuses, bombing, indiscriminate bombing of men, women, and children by occupying forces. Afghanistan is facing a difficult future, but this is a new era. There is no doubt about that. And I believe that this country is moving forward. I also hope to see that education here, well, not hope, I know that education here will follow under Islamic law. And that is that schools are separated. Boys go to one school and girls go to another school. I myself went to a segregated school. All of the members of my family, my cousins, all of my family, they went to segregated schools, and I believe that, you know, that the Islamic teachings as applied to schooling are beneficial, not only in terms of developing students, but also in terms of academics.
Okay. How were you kidnapped and how did you feel when you first released the reality of the situation?
I was kidnapped about 20 meters outside of the American University of Afghanistan. Unfortunately, despite the fact that the Taliban had repeatedly warned the university that they were going to take staff, the security was inadequate, and Kevin and I were taken right out the front of the university. I mean, they say that the abduction is the most shocking part of all, and they're very true, because your mind just closes down completely and you start to see things that maybe are not even related to the situation. I actually lost consciousness for somewhere between 4 to 6 hours, I think.
Mr. Omar, you were held for 1,192 days by the Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan. Did you witness or were you the victim of any inhuman treatment by the force of the Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan?
I've answered this question several times before, and I don't step around this question. Yes, there was inhumane treatment. But yes, also, 2 days after I arrived back in Australia, I stood up before the world and I announced that I had forgiven these people. And the only way to move forward is to give this forgiveness. And I am now a Muslim. It's dictated upon me. So, yes, it happened, but it's in the past. And now I want to look towards the future.
Okay. Do you have any fond memories of your time in captivity?
I have many fond memories of my time in captivity, but one of my fondest was I had a young guard and we used to call him Shabab. When I first met him, he was 16 years old. He was a typical Pashtun. He was very modest. When he came in to sit down and meet me, he crossed his legs and he wouldn't look up at me. And finally, after a couple of days, he would sort of look at me and he started to talk to me. He was with me the whole time, so I watched him go from a teenager to a young man. And one day we were outside, very, very rare for us to be outside. And he said to me, Tima, come, we're going to plant this tree. And he said, like, we will plant this tree, and when you come back, we'll see how much this tree has grown.
Mr. Omar, what's your opinion about Mr. Anas Haqqani?
I first met Anas Haqqani in 2020, not long after I'd been released. I met him in Qatar. I was invited by the Islamic Emirate to attend the signing of the peace treaty, the Doha Accord. I got to spend probably 4 or 5 days with Anas and sitting and talking to him. We had so many things in common. He was taken as a prisoner and I was taken, and we used to talk about these things. It's easy to talk to somebody who knows what you've been through. I knew of the history of the Haqqani family, of course, but I wasn't going to make a judgment, and I went there with an open mind, and I found Anas to be warm, compassionate, patient. While I was tired and angry and emotional, like his fortitude inspires me. The way that he is able to conduct himself, the way that he reflects the values of Islam. You know, I call him my little brother, but sometimes he feels like he's my bigger brother.
Very good. A serious question now. What do you want from the world for Afghanistan?
I would like the world to stop turning its back on Afghanistan. Afghanistan is in this situation today because of the world and because of what has happened. Now, people might say that Afghanistan is in this situation because of Osama bin Laden, but Osama bin Laden left several days after the American arrived, and the Americans were here for 20 years after that. Nation building. I want the world, first of all, to accept that they've made mistakes. Foreign troops committed atrocities here on Afghan soil. And these are facts. These are documented not only by members of human rights organizations, but by independent journalists. And if it was any other country, Afghan people should have received an apology despite who is in government. And the world also needs to remove the unjust sanctions that they have placed against the Afghan people. Sanctions never harm a government, they harm the people. And what the international community is doing is telling the Afghan people, you change your culture, you change your religion, you change the way you dress and the way that you have lived for thousands of years. Afghans have lived this way for thousands of more years than Westerners have. And unless you do that, we are going to starve you to death and kill thousands of babies. I mean, if it wasn't so serious, you would think this was a joke, but this is not a joke. These are Afghan lives, and the world has to take responsibility for this situation because they caused it. And they need to do the right thing. They need to come back. They need to give support to Afghanistan. I'm not asking them to recognize the IEA. I'm just asking them at this moment to help the Afghan people because the world owes the Afghan people that.
Thank you. Do you follow Islamic teachings?
Yes, I do. I try my best. I converted to Islam when I was a captive, and I had learnt what I could from a book. I'm still learning things every day. I have a lot more to learn, but I pray 5 times a day. I try to do good actions. I try to be kind to people who are younger than me and respectful to people that are older than me. It's also a big change in my life because I wasn't like this before captivity.
Yeah. What's your message for the people of Afghanistan and world?
My message to the people of Afghanistan is, well, a new era has begun. And as I said before, this is not going to be easy. But Afghan people are the most resilient people I have ever met on the face of the earth. They are innovative. They are, they are able to meet any challenge that they face. And I have great belief in the Afghan people. The world needs to enable the Afghan people to progress. The world needs to look forward and realize that Afghanistan and the Afghan people are an independent nation and they should have the right to make their own decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Omar, what do you want as an educator for Afghanistan from the Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan?
I would like the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan to continue to support education in regards to Islamic values. So education, of course, has to be segregated. Education is a right which is given to all people under Islam, to men and women. And I know that at this point there are many things going on in the country. I know that we are still moving towards a safer and more secure Afghanistan, but this safety and security also depends on the education of women, and that includes women of all ages. Every person deserves the right to an education. And as I said before, I find Afghan students to be natural. And this is a quality that you don't see.
How's the hospitality of Afghans with you nowadays?
I don't know whether you can notice, but I've only been here for 3 days and I think I put on 3 kilos. I spent a lot of time with the Afghan community in Australia, and part of Afghan hospitality is food, and more food. So not only that, but the treatment that I receive by Afghans, I'm humbled by it. They make me feel like I'm someone special, I'm an ordinary person who has been on a journey, yet the Afghan people, they welcome me to their country, they welcome me to their houses, and I know that they would literally give me the clothes off their back.
And as the last question, do you have anything else to add?
I would just like to address some of the comments in the foreign media that have been made about me coming to Afghanistan. I know that even my own family have been shocked by the decision. But as I mentioned earlier, it's not a decision that I made lightly. And I would ask foreign journalists and media to stop judging me through their eyes and to understand that I do work hard for education. I am here to improve the rights for all Afghans in any way that I can. I am not a puppet of the Taliban. I have freedom of speech, okay? I came here of my own free will, and I'm very happy that I did that. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you, Mr. Jibreel, for accepting our invitation. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much.